Hello. Just getting fired up as usual. So we'll give it some time here. Greetings. Thanks for stopping in again. Hopefully we will have a positive and productive discussion tonight. Mostly one-sided for a while, and but then we'll get into hopefully open conversation at the end. Thank you. I needed a little bit. I'm a little bit nervous about some things, so I appreciate that. So like I said, usually I ramble and ramble and ramble, which I will plan on rambling for a long time tonight. But I'm just giving some time for the room to get started and for us to start on time in about 8 minutes. So we're a little early as usual. Hello, Carol. Thank you for coming in. I will speak my mind. Thank you. I appreciate that. What am I nervous about? I'm nervous about the fact that, some of the things that I want to say, I can't say bluntly without risking getting kicked off of TikTok and having my account completely shut down and destroyed, which I'm not terribly excited about. So that's probably the number one thing that I'm worried about. Thank you for some gifts. That's amazing. Thank you so much. So that's the number one thing. I have to skirt a very thin line of what I can talk about and get away with and say. And then there's a little bit nerve-wracking part that I have been here before when I have people who follow what I'm reporting on and what I'm investigating, and then if I come up with a new way of looking at it, they think that I've betrayed them somehow. So we'll see how that goes. I'm just going to speak my mind and share what's on my mind, and we'll see how it goes. So there's a part of me that's like, I get tired of people getting upset with me and saying that I've betrayed them somehow if I tell them something that they don't like to hear. But then there's also I got to make sure I can say what I want to say without getting kicked off TikTok. So we'll give it our best shot tonight. That's what I'm nervous about. So thank you for supporting, giving me likes, getting the channel, getting some traction in the 7 minutes that we've got before this gets going. I'll do a formal introduction in about 7 minutes, and I've got freaking like 8 pages of notes. I did initial first thoughts of the Luigi Mangione special on Investigation Discovery Channel on Monday night, and now 2 nights later I'm doing more of a deep dive where I can really get into some of the things that I wanted to get into more, not just my initial thoughts, but some real deep discussion, I guess, if you will. So, and it's kept me up a little bit. Like I was a little bit anxious when I woke up this morning, kind of putting all my notes together. I spent hours last night putting my notes together, and I was like, how do I say all the things I want to say? So we'll see if I can pull it off. Thank you again for all the support that's coming in right now, and all the likes and stuff that is happening to get us a good boost. When we get started in about 6 minutes, it's one of those things that I'm going to say this again at the top of the hour, but if we do for some reason get a restriction on this live, you may not be able to get back into the room. So if you are wanting to hear what's being said tonight, either don't swipe away because you may not get back in, or be prepared to go to devilsadvocates.info, where the recording of this event will be posted after a couple hours after the end of the broadcast. It's minimum of 1 hour, but maybe longer, because it may take me the full hour talking at 100 miles an hour to even get through my notes, and then I'd like to open it up for some discussion. If you want to hear my formal part, hopefully I'll have that done in about an hour. If you want to stay for questions and answers and interaction, and maybe even some people coming on the microphone, that'll be maybe the last half hour to an hour, probably an hour. So we could go 2 hours tonight, maybe. I don't have this down to a scripted time, but I think maybe an hour to present all the things that I want to present, and then an hour of questions and answers, and maybe some people to join me on the live if they want. The topic is going to be the latest Luigi Mangione special. It was aired by Investigation Discovery Channel called Who is Luigi Mangione? And my deep dive analysis on that episode, including quotes from the show and what I think it means, what it doesn't mean, what did they treat it fairly, did they miss something, did we miss something? It's all of my thoughts and analysis of the latest Luigi Mangione documentary. And so there's a lot of people on TikTok who wanted to boycott the documentary. That show, the documentary I'm talking about, was on Investigation Discovery Channel. It probably is still there. I don't know. I'm assuming you can do an on-demand thing and see it anytime you want to. It's called Who is Luigi Mangione on Investigation Discovery Channel. It's a 1-hour special. I'm going to cover my analysis. If you're the kind of person that would rather see it first before you hear somebody's opinion about it, then the one and only time I'll tell you to tune out. Maybe you should check out, because I'm going to give you my opinions. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about in depth. Great if you have seen it, so that you can feel whether or not I'm presenting this material fairly or not. If you haven't, then after you hear my biased take on it, then you can come back and watch the show later and tell me whether you think I handled it fairly or not. So yeah, sounds like it is available on Max, streaming on Max. So, and it probably is on demand on Investigation Discovery as well. So we got 3 minutes or so before we get started. We've got a really good start to the room tonight. We've got a good support for 1.3K likes. That's great. We've got 40 people almost in the room. So that's typically where we hold usually, is around 40 people. So we're starting out hot and heavy, which is awesome. Let's give it 3 more minutes, and then I'll get into the official, my official take, analysis, comments, disclaimers, warnings, all that good stuff. So settle in, buckle up. Again, be prepared to not swipe away, because as we get about 5-10 minutes into this, who knows if we're going to be able to have new people see the channel and join. It may be locked down and not served up to people once we get going. Who knows? I've been really lucky since TikTok went dark and came back online. I don't know if it's lucky or if something's changed in the policy, but in any way, shape, or form, the point being is that I've been lucky and haven't had a community guidelines violation for a long time, so I'm crossing my fingers. And thank you for gifts and support tonight as I work through this very challenging set of analysis. My ear's a little plugged up on one side, and that feels like I'm talking in a tunnel, so hopefully that will clear out. I don't know why. I just took a shower, and maybe I got some water in my ear or some shit, so we'll deal with that. About 1 minute, and then we'll get officially started. So, yeah, I got a bunch of notes here. Lots of thoughts. Lots of an in-depth discussion about that special, which I'll cover again, a recap of this when we get started here in a second. Well, in 30 seconds, something like that. So thanks again for helping out with the likes. Smashing the like button helps us out. Sharing or letting other people know about it would help out. Staying in the channel and not swiping away would help out. All those things would be awesome. I understand if it's going to be a difficult challenge for you to listen, that you might not want to stay, so I don't begrudge anybody. Question already. All right. Well, let's see. You got 15 seconds. Oh, it's 6 o'clock. Maybe you ran out of time for your question. I'm just giving you a second to see if you were typing a question. Otherwise, I'll just get started. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, let's get started. So, tonight is going to be a deep dive analysis, my in-depth analysis and opinions of the special that just aired on the 17th of February on Investigation Discovery Channel called Who is Luigi Mangione? I understand that a lot of people on TikTok have been super reluctant to watch any of the documentaries because it feels a little bit biased to start putting documentaries out before the man has even had his trial and his day in court to see if he's really guilty of the things that they've accused him of. And so therefore, a lot of people have wanted to boycott the documentaries in general. My opinion is that I'm a kind of a person who wants to be intellectually honest. So I might have opinions and I might have thoughts about how things are going to play out, but I want to keep an open mind and I want to hear both sides of the argument and I want to make an informed opinion. A lot of times those opinions don't get changed necessarily by the facts, but sometimes they do. So I believe that it's intellectually honest for us to hear both sides of the argument. So that's what why I watched the special. What I recommend doing tonight is one, before we get started, understand that what I'm going to talk about is going to be skirting the lines of what TikTok will allow you to talk about. And the reason being is I'm not going to say anything different than what the show itself, actually, the documentary kind of presented. But you have to understand that one of the questions that was asked in this documentary, and I'm going to go through a summary of what a little bit better, but one of the things that was mentioned in there is the idea of what if Luigi Mangione did this, but there's people who feel like it was justified. That's the area where TikTok probably isn't super comfortable for you to even suggest such a thing, because that could be perceived by some as condoning violence, inciting violence, and that is something that no platform wants any part of. And I understand why they want no part of that. My caveat to that is I'm only expressing what was aired in the show itself. It's mainstream media type stuff that was put out there. If they're allowed to talk about it, I should be allowed to talk about it. We should be allowed to talk about it. We're adults, we're mature, we should be able to have conversations that are difficult to have, such as how do people feel about it if that's the case. I want to point out also that a lot of this analysis will be based on us having to assume for a moment a few things that you may not be comfortable assuming. So let me explain what I'm talking about. I want you first to listen very, very carefully to what I say. When I talk, I'm careful a lot of times about what I say and what I don't say. Don't read into what I'm saying. Don't say, oh, if he said that, he must think that. A lot of times I find people don't understand what I really think about a matter. They start making presuppositions and judging of, because they're thinking where they know where I'm going. So be careful to listen to what I say very carefully and what I don't say very carefully. Don't assume when I go through tonight's analysis, if you're a supporter of Luigi in any way, shape, or form, do not assume that I have changed my personal opinions. If you watch my channel, you'll know that I have postulated a theory that there were multiple conspirators involved in the shooting of Brian Thompson. I have speculated that Luigi could have been one of them. He could have been a group of them. He may have taken the fall for something that a group of conspirators done. He could have done it alone. He could be completely innocent and be framed by a group of conspirators. All of those options are on the table for me, because I am being what I want to consider to be intellectually honest and say, I just want to know what happened and I want to keep an open mind. I am a firm believer in the principle of innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Because of this, we must presume that Luigi Mangione is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Also, it's important to understand that there's a difference between being innocent and being not guilty. This is a difficult concept to understand, but what I'm saying is a person could not be innocent, in other words, be involved in something, but not be considered guilty by a jury, not be held accountable for their actions. So that is another option that's on the table in this situation. So when you listen to me and you're going to hear me present what I think the whole purpose of the special, Who is Luigi Mangione, on the Investigation Discovery Channel, and when I tell you what I think their message was, I'm telling you exactly that. This is what I believe their message was, and if it's true, careful to listen to what I'm saying. If what they say and presented is true, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you all the evidence that they gave to present their arguments. If their argument is true, we should be asking some new questions. But I'm not saying they are true or they aren't true. But what we're going to do is we're going to analyze in depth the Investigation Discovery take on it, what I believe the message they were trying to give, and then asking us, do we need to consider this as what really happened and ask new questions. So, I want you to make a bunch of assumptions that you may not be comfortable making, and I understand that. Again, for the sake of being intellectually honest and open, I want you to assume the following things. Trust me when I say this. I want you to assume them for tonight. It doesn't mean that you have to believe that they're true, but for the sake of our argument tonight, assume these following things are true. That the Reddit posts that the special quoted from Luigi Mangione posting as Mr. Cactus is actually written by Luigi Mangione. I want you to assume this for the sake of argument tonight. Whether or not you believe Mr. Cactus really was Luigi Mangione or not, I'm asking you for the moment, for this analysis, to assume that Luigi Mangione really did write the things that they say he wrote on Reddit as Mr. Cactus. I want you to also assume for tonight that the Goodreads account by Luigi Mangione, where he gives book reviews, specifically on Ted Kaczynski's manifesto, I want you to assume for the sake of argument tonight that that was really written by Luigi Mangione. Again, I am not telling you it was written by Luigi Mangione, and I'm also not telling you it was not written by Luigi Mangione. I'm just saying, for the sake of understanding the documentary's position, let's assume for a moment that the Goodreads account really was written by Luigi Mangione, because we're going to get into what it says and what it means if that was written by him. This is the hardest one for me, even personally. Let's assume for tonight's discussion that the letter to the feds, as they called it in the documentary, that Luigi Mangione apparently had with him when he was arrested in Altoona, Pennsylvania, he had a letter written to the feds saying that he respected what they do and such things. Let's assume for the moment that that was really written by Luigi Mangione. And let's assume also that the spiral notebook that Luigi Mangione supposedly had on him was also written by Luigi Mangione. This is difficult for me even, because I believe that there is a vested interest in law enforcement to make people biased against this person, to say he had things in his possession, which he didn't. And there is some reasons to believe that he may not have had those things. But for the sake of argument tonight, I'm asking you to assume for a moment that all of these things are really written by Luigi. So we're gonna assume he wrote as Mr. Cactus on Reddit. We're gonna assume that the Goodreads account was his. We're gonna assume that the letter to the feds and the spiral notebook are Luigi Mangione's. If we can agree with all those assumptions for the moment, for the sake of argument, then I'm gonna present to you what I believe the documentary tells us about Luigi Mangione from those assumptions. Whether you leave here tonight and believe those assumptions are correct or not, that's up to you. But let's get into this. I also will tell you that at the end of the night, I'm going to offer some suggested ways that you can get yourself more involved in this case, especially if what the documentary, in my opinion, sums up. That there's basically a Luigi failed to do something. That's what the summary of this thing was, is that Luigi failed at his mission. And if you want to, if you're a sympathizer of Luigi and you want to make sure he didn't fail at his mission, if the documentary is correct, then I'm going to give you some ideas on how to make sure that Luigi's mission didn't fail. And it's not a call to action, and it's not a call of violence or anything like that. But I want you to listen and hear what I would suggest as some steps that you can take to try to help ensure that if the way they presented Luigi in this special is correct, how you can make it so that he didn't fail, because they basically will postulate that he failed. He failed in his mission. So again, I want to remind you that my initial first impressions from the show were aired on Monday after the episode aired, and they were recorded and uploaded to YouTube, and they're on our website, devilsadvocates.info. It's a featured video there. And also on our Devil's Advocates channel on YouTube, you can go listen to my first initial thoughts, and now you can listen to my deep dive if you're curious to see whether I changed my opinion or just better articulated it now. And then I'm going to be posting tonight's live as well on the same place, on my website, devilsadvocates.info, and on YouTube. Again, if this live gets restricted for in the middle of this because of some comments that we're going to make, you may not be able to get in. So be looking for us on the website, on Devil's Advocates, on the YouTube channel, or just don't leave this live until we're done with the analysis, because you may not be able to get back in. This is going to be a very difficult conversation for people who are Luigi sympathizers, because the special basically will tell us in a decent way what might have been going on in Luigi Mangione's head if he was indeed the shooter, why he did what he did, including why he went dark from his family, and what he intended the outcome of this to be, and whether or not he failed in that mission, which I've already kind of told you. They will say that he failed in his mission. All right. I think we can get into this stuff. So let me tell you that off the bat, there was some new information presented in the documentary. I just wanted to hit off the top that I thought was relatively new. I've been following this case for quite a bit. One of the things they said straight out, I believe it was stated by a New York Police Department detective, what's his name, Kenny? Joseph Kenny basically stated that they do have 5 fingerprints that match Luigi on a water bottle. They also stated that they have 2 fingerprints that match Luigi on the energy bar wrapper. There was no mention that I saw in this special about the cell phone or a smudged or partial fingerprint. They are now claiming in this special that they full on have his fingerprints on 2 items, 5 on one item, 2 on another, nothing about the cell phone. They also mentioned, and this is a clever wording, the bullet casings at the scene were found to match the gun that was found on Luigi. Now, this may or may not be new information. Again, one person has postulated that all they're saying is it's consistent with a 9mm pistol. That would be consistent with the gun that's found on Luigi. Others are indicating that what they're saying is it actually has been proven to have been fired by that gun. That is not what they said in the special. What they did say was the bullet casings at the scene were matched with the gun that Luigi was arrested with. Take that for what it is. I don't know if they're trying to state they can prove it was fired by that gun, or if it was just a similar caliber as that gun. It's not clear. But it was something that they stated firmly, as if, look, we've got this guy. We got 5 of his fingerprints on a water bottle, 2 on a wrapper, and we can match the bullet casings to his gun that he had on him. Wrap. Okay? That's kind of their position. And again, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that opinion, but that's what they wanted to show. I'm going to tell you what the major summary of the whole entire episode was about. The summary of their major points, in my opinion, are this. Luigi Mangione was born into a life of privilege, and yet, despite all of his money, the medical community had failed him. He had problems with a lifelong problem of cognitive decline, and doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with his head. In addition, he had a surfing accident and a back injury that was making him unable to have the physical life that he wished to have, and doctors couldn't figure out exactly how to fix that as well, and so the medical community had failed him. And so one of the arguments that they're making in the argument is that Luigi Mangione felt that his life had been impacted and he would never have the life that he wished to have, and the medical community had failed him, and therefore they became a target of his anger, a target of somebody has to pay for the fact I will not be able to have a life because of a system that's broken, and they don't care about people, and they won't fix anything. And so he took out that rage, if you will. They indicated that he became depressed because the insurance agency was more interested in money over caring for people. That we lived in a capitalistic society. They pointed to writings. We're going to get into these writings if you care to hear these specifics. We're going to, again, this is where I asked you to assume. Assume when I give you the writings from Mr. Cactus that it was Luigi writing. So if we're going to make that assumption, I'm going to tell you exactly what he said that led this documentary to believe that Luigi basically felt that the medical community had failed him. and that we lived in a capitalistic society that cares only about profits and not about people. When he realized the depths, that despite his wealth, he wasn't going to be able to get fixed, this is what drove him over the edge. Luigi also, they said, may feel that he's not like the rest of us. He decided in the argument in this episode that we as a society are pacifists and NPCs. This is a concept that gets brought up in the show in detail. A non-player character, if you will, from role-playing games. We're not really playing the game of life. We're just floaters. We're non-players. And that Luigi himself was afraid that we were all a bunch of pacifists who don't do anything to change the broken system. And that he was concerned that he was just going to be one of these people who just lay down and take it like everybody else and accept that it's just the way it is in our society. It's a broken society. And that fear of just being a sheeple and laying down led him to become on a different wavelength than the rest of us. That he decided to do something about it. That he was not going to be a pacifist any longer. And he felt justified in taking action because essentially, and again, this is the wording of the show that I'm trying to summarize, we're all too cowardly to do it. So somebody needed to stand up and take a stand because we're not going to do it. We're too cowardly. So he was brave enough to take a stand and do something about the system. The problem is if that's Luigi's motivation, and if Luigi did these things to take a stand, did it work? Has he made a change? That is the ultimate question that we're going to ask at the end of the show. And the show will say, no, he failed. And we're going to talk about, did he fail? Is it over? Or is there still a chance for change, if that's what he wanted? I want to also point out that if this narrative is true that was postulated by Who is Luigi Mangione special on Investigator Discovery, we have to ask ourselves, in my opinion, are we diminishing Luigi's actions by doing things like focusing on how hot he is and how everybody wants to sleep with them? Are we diminishing it and making it about a man and not about the mission? We make him into a meme and not a mission and not about what it was really about. Are we diminishing everything that Luigi intended to do? If his intention was to start a revolution, if his intention was to wake up American consciousness, to make us realize that somebody needs to do something about it, are we diminishing everything he intended to do because all we focus on is how freaking hot he is? Right? Do we diminish what Luigi attempted to do if we keep focusing on ideas like where did his mental health go wrong? If we focus on saying he had a mental health problem, what you're saying is no rational person would decide that violence is going to solve anything. No rational person would stand up for the little guy and try to make a change in this country. That's not rational. What is rational is for you to remain a pacifist and not do anything. Therefore, do we diminish everything Luigi did if we say, oh yeah, poor guy just had some mental problems. If we can get him the right psychiatric care, he'll be like the rest of us, back to being a sheeple, and everything will be fine. So do we diminish everything Luigi intended to do if we push the narrative he had a mental issue, mental problems, and that he just needs psychiatric help? Do we diminish what he did if we say that he's completely innocent and that he had nothing to do with it? On the surface, it sounds like a great thing. I understand, and I believe in the concept of innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. However, if we continue to insist he never did anything, do we simultaneously diminish everything he intended to do? Did Luigi Mangione, and this is the argument that they're going to make in the episode, want to be credited for what he did and say, yeah, I did it, and it was the right thing to do? If we insist that he didn't do it and he had nothing to do and he's an innocent man being framed, do we diminish everything that Luigi Mangione intended to do? These are the questions that have to be asked from this documentary's perspective. Again, I ask you to be very careful when you're listening to what I'm saying, whether or not I am changing opinions or whether I'm giving a summation of what I believe is the heart of this documentary. I want to talk now briefly about the guests that came on to the documentary, and then I'll start getting into the 5 basic major points and quotes that they used to support it, to build the narrative that we just talked about. The special guests that were on this documentary were Casey Jordan, a criminologist. About half the show, I would say, was all this redhead Casey Jordan criminologist. So she's a specialist in criminology, thinking what criminals think, why do they do things, what is their motivation. I would say about half the 1-hour documentary was devoted to her opinions about Luigi Mangione. Dan Abrams was also a law and crime commentator from Law and Crime Network. He's given about a quarter of that show. So between the two of the criminologists, whose job is to basically speculate about why people commit crimes and what's going on in their head, they were about 75% of the show. Okay? Intermixed in that was Joseph Kinney, NYPD Chief of Detectives. He had about maybe 10% of the show. Wendell Potter, who was a former insurance executive, giving his insight into the corruption of insurance and the dichotomy between making profits or making people better healthcare. He gets a little bit of time. Some family friends of both Brian Thompson, and of Luigi Mangione's family get a few minutes of airtime, not much. R.J. Martin, a friend of Luigi Mangione's, gets a little bit of time. Philip Klein, a former bodyguard of Brian Thompson, gets a little, tiny bit of time. Dr. David Hanscom, who's an orthopedic spine surgery, gives us a little bit of an insight into Luigi's mindset and his surgery. Dorian Wright, Luigi Mangione's yoga instructor, gets a moment to talk about his little thing. We'll talk about that just briefly because it's more funny than anything else. And Gurwinder Bogle gets some airtime at the end of the show. Gurwinder Bogle is basically an author, a thinker who wrote articles that Luigi became inspired by, is basically how this episode would say. And so in that regards, Gurwinder Bogle basically gets the last word in this episode. He basically gets to point out when Luigi reached out to him, make the connection that it was because of the last conversation that Gurwinder had with, Bogle had with Luigi Mangione, that probably set Luigi Mangione off on this path to go dark and finally commit this shooting. And then Gurwinder's ultimate conclusion of, unfortunately, Luigi Mangione failed at what he wanted to accomplish. So that's the summary of the key players and the key voices. There were some other names that are mentioned, but they get very, very little screen time. But we might talk about them as we get into this. So now I'm going to go through the documentary from Luigi's health issues. Then we're going to get into what they describe as his radicalization period. Then what his plans and motivations were for committing the act if he did that thing. And then where do we go from here? And that's going to be the kind of the outline of what we're doing for the rest of my analysis. And then we'll open up for discussions, comments, questions, and these kind of things. So regarding his health issues, a quote that they had from Luigi Mangione posting as Mr. Cactus. Again, I ask you for the sake of this argument to assume for a moment that Luigi Mangione indeed was writing as Mr. Cactus on Reddit and that these are legitimate things that Luigi wrote. If they are legitimate things that Luigi wrote, we should ask ourselves, is the documentary accurately portraying the psychology of Luigi Mangione? Right? So this was something that Mr. Cactus, Luigi Mangione, was alleged to have wrote. I contracted Lyme's when I was 13 years old. That's Lyme's disease. And I started noticing mild cognitive decline when I was at 15. My symptoms were very minor at first. I was able to excel in high school. So right off the bat, the show was pointing out that Luigi Mangione had a lifelong history of cognitive decline that he complained about repeatedly on Reddit throughout his academic career. Now, I want to comment that one of the things that's a little confusing about this was, while he, as Mr. Cactus, is claiming he has a lifelong problem with cognitive decline, he was valedictorian at his high school, at a private prestigious high school that was $40,000 a year to attend, top of his class in University of Pennsylvania, formed a game club, did all kinds of great accomplishments, was very smart and very bright, while claiming he has cognitive decline. So either this guy is super, super brilliant and on his decline is smarter than most of us, or something's not entirely great. But let's assume for a moment Luigi Mangione indeed recognized that starting at age 13 and 15 years old, he started to notice he had Lyme's disease at 13, and he started to notice in himself a cognitive decline starting at age 15. Casey Jordan, the criminologist, comments on this. We know from his writings that even during college, he struggled with maladies and pain and sleeplessness. From Reddit, Mr. Cactus, Luigi Mangione allegedly, says, basically, I'm in bed for 8 hours every night, and I wake up feeling unrefreshed no matter how much sleep I get. A big thing has been made by a lot of people about Luigi mentioning he has brain fog. I want to argue just briefly that brain fog does not explain murder. Brain fog does not cause someone to go to a psychotic break. Brain fog does not do any of those things. So making a jump from brain fog to, oh, he's got mental problems, that's why he did what he did, is a bit rash, in my opinion. And again, I feel like if Luigi does have a message to give, saying that he just had a mental breakdown is diminishing what he has tried to accomplish. So, continuing on, Casey Jordan, the criminologist, says, imagine that you're in your early 20s and no matter how much money you have, suddenly you're experiencing a lapse in brain cognition. He refers to it as brain fog. This was one of the things that he kept pointing out in the documentary, is that despite all of Luigi's money, the medical community couldn't fix his problems. A quote from Mr. Cactus now. The symptoms worsened exponentially last year after my fratmates' my fraternity's very tame hell week. I simply wasn't able to recover from a week of disturbed sleep. It's absolutely brutal to have such a life-altering issue, especially since the issue itself wears down the critical logic thinking mind that you usually use to tackle it. So again, if we assume that it really is Luigi posting on Reddit as Mr. Cactus, he's admitting that he had cognitive brain fog, that he had issues with concentration, and that despite sleeping 8 hours a night, he wasn't feeling rested. This again does not lead someone to murder, but let's take for the assumption of the argument that is indeed what's happening to Luigi from his own words, from his own mouth, so to speak, his own fingers, because it was written. Another quote from Mr. Cactus, aka Luigi, if it is him. I used to play chess daily against my roommate, and I used it as a metric to see how the brain fog was improving. Eventually, I just stopped, since I couldn't remember my in strategy. He would use the same moves against me every day, and I just couldn't remember them. So again, we have to assume for a moment that Luigi is admitting he's got brain fog issues, that he's having cognitive issues, and that he's using chess as a way to gauge whether or not his mental properties are declining. Despite all this, he's able to excel academically. So I don't know how those two exactly reconcile, but again, let's assume that Luigi is admitting he's got cognitive issues and he uses chess to test himself and make sure that if he's learning anything, and he feels like he's not. He feels like he's slipping because his roommate keeps beating him in chess the same way over and over again, and he just doesn't learn from it. Casey Jordan, the criminologist, goes on to say the brain fog becomes almost an obsession with Luigi Mangione because it's something that he can't overcome no matter how wealthy he is. This was a point that they hammer over and over again, that there was this frustration on his part that money isn't going to fix the problem. Mr. Cactus writes, they say, the people around you simply won't understand your symptoms. They certainly don't for me. As each test comes back negative, the doctors don't have a fucking clue what's going on. So now we see Luigi as the documentary is painting, Luigi is blaming the healthcare system. I've got brain issues. I go to doctors and they have no fucking clue what's going on. They just keep passing on this issue. They're not fixing me. July 4th, 2023, they show kind of focused in a video that date was focused on in a video clip suggesting that this is when it happens. It appears that he suffers a life-changing injury during a surfing accident that caused him severe back injury, and that is what may have put him on this path. This is something other documentaries have said as well. Luigi had an accident, a surfing accident. His pain was so bad that it led him into depression, and this depression made him go dark and decide to take out his revenge for his effed up back on the health insurance industry. According to Mr. Cactus again, Luigi, writing as Mr. Cactus on Reddit, it started when I first aggravated my spondy, and it gives the technical term for that. 1.5 years ago after surfing, my back and my hips locked up on the accident, and my whole lumbar hips have been out of whack since. Mr. Cactus also explained that he had bladder and genital pain for the last year off and on. There was another documentary that pointed out that he complained that he wasn't even able to enjoy sex because of his injury. But that wasn't pointed out in this particular documentary. RJ Martin, a friend of his, continued to support this idea of this back injury debilitating him and making him go into a depression, as it was one of those interesting injuries where one day he could be athletic and do something, and then the next day he'd be immobile and stuck in bed. I want to point out briefly that this is one of the things that have been a bone of contention for the longest time. Everybody will point out during the conspiracy era, the early stages of this shooting, that Luigi had a bad back, so there's no way he could have ridden the bike for X number of period of time at such a speed, blah, 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 because he has a bad back. This was a friend of his which indicated in this documentary, Luigi had good days and he had bad days. Days in which he could be very athletic, and days in which he would be incapacitated in bed. So if these things are true, it explains that that condition can come and go. It also is something that I've seen myself in back injuries. So we'll just take it for the moment, for the narrative, for us to discuss and consider. Dr. David Hamskin, who's the orthopedic surgeon that shows up and for just briefly said, Luigi is typical of every patient in my practice. You're bounced around from in the medical system and nobody's telling you what's going on. And the repeated dashing of hope induces depression. So again, this individual, this spinal surgeon, was essentially there mostly to just give that one clip that Luigi was probably suffering depression because people who have debilitating back injuries tend to just get bounced around. They don't get told any permanent things. They don't know what's going on. And that helplessness of never being truly fixed leads a person to depression. Mr. Cactus, therefore, now is quoted again writing about this situation. It was completely devastating as a young athletic person. Seemingly all I could read on the internet was that I was destined for chronic pain and a death job for the rest of my life. So the argument that they're posting in the documentary is that Luigi Mangione wanted to have a very physical, active life, and it was dawning on him that due to his back injury, he was going to be not be able to have the athletic life that he wished to have, that he would always have these periods of time when he just was going to be incapacitated due to the back injury. From Reddit, Mr. Cactus that is quoted as saying, I had surgery 2 weeks ago because I had nerve issue. The surgery was painful for the first couple of days, but I was shocked that by day 7, I was literally zero pain meds. Obviously, it'll be a while until I get into rigorous activity, but it was way less of a big deal than I had anticipated. Some have used this to say, well, the back surgery went well and he's fixed. It is unclear, but the documentary would again suggest that Luigi had good days and he had bad days. There was things that were good and there was times when he'd be locked up in bed. So this led to a period now where we're basically covering Luigi had this thing going on where despite all the money and all the privilege that he had, doctors weren't fixing his mental issue, his brain fog, and they weren't fixing his back issues to the point that he was not certain that he was not going to spend the rest of his life in a desk job. And that was not for Luigi. This is the mental picture the show is trying to show. Then starts the radicalization phase. Casey Jordan, the criminologist, starts out with, he's born into this life of privilege. Going back through his Reddit postings, it seems that he feels a little bit guilty about being wealthy. From Mr. Cactus, they quote, I remember one time as a young child playing with friends, fantasizing, we each sketched out our ideal dream home. Everyone else drew intricate mansions, and I sketched the floor plan of a simple square house. They thought I was weird. I thought their mansions were a lot of bullshit. So they're showing that Luigi Mangione, despite being wealthy and coming from a wealthy family, was not materialistic. And he viewed his materialistic friends as the ones who were basically full of shit. And they viewed him, for not appreciating his life of privilege, as off. The criminologist then, Jordan Casey, says, in his Reddit discussions about his own back surgery, someone responds about back surgery, and Luigi immediately starts to coach this person on how to get the surgery done. This is interesting to me. This is supposedly Mr. Cactus talking to somebody, coaching them on how to get their surgery covered by insurance. Keep trying different surgeries, he says. Tell them that you're unable to work and do your job. We live in a capitalistic society. I found that the medical industry responds to these key words far more urgently than you describing unbearable pain or how it's impacting your quality of life. So again, when I asked you at the top of the show, let's assume for a moment that Luigi Mangione is Mr. Cactus and he really wrote these things. If he did, you're seeing that Luigi Mangione is saying, look, the health insurance industry doesn't give a shit about you. So don't come at them telling how much pain you're in. They don't care. They don't care how much pain you're in. You need to couch it in words that mean something to them. I can't work and be a good slave to the system if I don't get this fixed. I can't do my job as a worker if I don't get this fixed. They don't care that you're in pain. They don't care how much it's changing your quality of life. You're better off if you tell the medical industry you're not going to be a productive worker in the workforce unless you get it done. So, continuing on. This was a quote from Dan Abrams now, the Law and Crime Network criminologist. Luigi refers to the healthcare companies as a mafioso, and he's clearly writing for public consumption. And this was a quote they said from Luigi, but they didn't attribute to where it was, whether it was in the letter to the feds, the spiral notebook. It wasn't directly quoted where it came from. This is supposedly from Luigi Mangione, not attributed. The reality is these mafioso have simply gotten too powerful and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. So again, we're building this psychology profile in this episode that Luigi Mangione is viewing the medical industry as capitalistic, predatory, not caring about your actual quality of life and well-being, but whether or not you make the money and you can work in the workforce. Focus now on 2024, it says, and we're looking at his Goodreads account. The book review that he made specifically of Ted Kaczynski's manifesto, The Unabomber. The book by Ted Kaczynski was called Industrial Society and Its Future by Theodore John Kaczynski. Luigi, on his Goodreads account, and again, I asked you at the beginning of this to assume for this sake of argument tonight, that Luigi Mangione actually wrote this Goodreads report. So if he did, let's talk about what he said and what it means to us about Luigi's mindset. It's easy to quickly and thoughtlessly write this off as a manifesto of a lunatic in order to avoid facing some of the uncomfortable problems it identifies. He was a violent individual, rightfully imprisoned, who maimed innocent people. While these tend to be characterized as those of a crazy Luddite, however, they are more accurately seen as the actions of an extreme political revolutionary. I want to break that down a little bit, because what the documentary tried to point out as well is that Luigi had some sort of conscience. He didn't want to hurt innocent people. They will claim in the episode that Luigi contemplated using a bomb to make his message, but he ultimately decided not to use a bomb because there was a risk that it was going to hurt innocent people. By contrast, Luigi Mangione did not view Brian Thompson as an innocent person. So when Luigi, according to the Goodreads report, is saying that Ted Kaczynski is rightfully imprisoned, he maimed innocent people. The difference isn't that he disagreed necessarily. The implication is he didn't necessarily disagree with Ted Kaczynski's bitch about capitalistic society. He complained about the method in which Ted Kaczynski allowed innocent people to be maimed and hurt in his pursuit to make a message. Whereas Luigi made sure not to hurt innocent people because, again, in the eyes of the documentary, Brian Thompson was not innocent. In fact, there's a person that's quoted in this episode that said, you know, I'm sorry, if you're the CEO of United Healthcare, there's no way you don't have blood on your hands. So Luigi may have had issue with Ted Kaczynski simply because of the fact that he injured innocent people and he was going to do a statement differently. That's what they were basically getting to. This a quote from the Goodreads thing that I believe personally is likely in direct reference to the book and the movie that I've mentioned in some of my videos, How to Blow Up a Pipeline. Luigi supposedly writes in his Goodreads report, let's assume for the sake of argument tonight that he did write this, a take that I found interesting is peaceful protest is outright ignored. Economic protest isn't possible in our current system. So, how long until we recognize that violence against those who lead us to our destruction is justified as self-defense? So again, let's break down what Luigi is saying, if that's Luigi writing on his Goodreads account, which is that legislation, enacting, voting new people in, trying to vote with your pocketbook hasn't changed anything. So when are we going to start realizing that maybe violence is the only way these people are going to listen? It's the only way we're going to fix this problem. This, in fact, is what I believe from a summary. I haven't read the book. How to Blow Up a Pipeline, which was a nonfiction book, was advocating for violence against the economic system. Not against people, but against the economic system. That legislation was not going to work. That protests were not going to work. Peaceful protests were not going to work. At some point, we have to acknowledge from history and looking at the history that violence actually does make change sometimes. And maybe we need to start thinking that violence is a potential answer, because non-peaceful or non-violent action has not made a change in this country and won't make a change in this country. And in the movie, I want to point out what's interesting is in the movie, it's a group of 20-something-year-olds like Luigi Mangione from different walks of life who are all upset about environmental terrorism, environmental destruction against people for the sake of profits. And so these people from different walks of life get together and they conspire to blow up a pipeline. And they were careful not to hurt innocent people. There's a similarity here between what they're saying what Luigi did. He doesn't want to hurt innocent people. And again, in the documentary's opinion, what they're trying to show, I believe, is that Luigi did not view Brian Thompson, the individual, as an innocent person. But he didn't want to use a bomb. He didn't want to hurt innocent people. And so it's similar to How to Blow Up a Pipeline. And in that movie, the conspirators all agree to let one person take the fall, who stayed behind to be picked up by the FBI when they swooped in and say immediately, I acted alone, it was just me, so that all the conspirators can get away. And I asked the question, and I still ask the question, even if Luigi Mangione is involved, did a similar situation happen here? His quote about how peaceful protests have been outright ignored, economic protests are not possible in this system, that only potentially violence is going to make a difference. Let me give you a quote from the actual book, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, and see how similar it sounds. At what point do we escalate? When do we conclude that the time has come to also try something different? When do we physically attack the things that can consume our planet and destroy them with our own hands? That was the gist of the book, a quote from the book, that it basically all of the things that we've done so far, the peaceful protest, it hasn't worked. When do we conclude that violence is going to be the only way that they're going to listen? A quote from Blow Up the Pipeline as well was, protest is when, this was a good quote from the book, I just thought I'd mention it. Protest is when I say I don't like this. Resistance is when I put an end to what I don't like. So again, one could argue, if the documentary is accurate in what Luigi was trying to accomplish, he was done talking it out. It was time to do something, to quit just hoping the system is going to change, because it's not. So you can protest, great, it does nothing. Resistance is when you do something. From the Goodreads report, Luigi also supposedly said, and a quote from about the Ted Kaczynski book, "Violence never solved anything is a statement that is made by cowards and predators." This is a big one. This is a really big one. Because what you will hear all the time on TikTok, on the media, and whatever is, we will not tolerate anyone supporting the idea that violence is the action, or that vigilante justice is the solution. That is intolerable. We will not tolerate that. So one has to ask, is it true? Is it true that violence never solves anything? Does history tell us that violence never solves anything? So let's continue on. And I know it sounds like Character had a disagreement about whether or not he wrote that. This is from the Goodreads thing, whether or not it was a paraphrase or somebody, a comment, something that was supposed to be on the Goodreads thing. But we'll talk about that at the end. I would love to have you up when we get done with this. In the movie, I've told you the kids basically wanted to make sure that they made an impact, but they also hoped that people were going to follow suit. The intent of the movie was they were hopeful that they were going to start a revolution, that other people were going to see the example, that all it takes is one person to set us in motion, and that other people would follow suit. And so in that regards, again, the documentary suggests this is what Luigi wanted to do as well. That Luigi Mangione wanted to start a revolution, to awaken class consciousness, to make people follow suit, to do likewise. And it's not going to happen. He failed. Because we all made him into a meme and about how sexy he is, instead of what his message was, and changing the system. We're not having conversations about the system. We're having conversations about the poor guy and whether he's going to get out and whether I get to marry him someday. So, continuing on. Luigi writes Gurwinder Bogle. We talked about this. So this is kind of getting towards the end before he goes dark. Gurwinder Bogle wrote an article specifically that has said Luigi reached out to him about, that was called "Why Everything is Becoming a Game." It was published April 20th, 2024. The episode says that Gurwinder tells us that Luigi paid $200 to become a founding member of his blog, his private blog kind of thing, and therefore got direct access to Gurwinder Bogle by paying $200 to be like a founding member of this blog. And because of that, Gurwinder Bogle had a video chat and conversations with Luigi, like, you know, direct one-on-one access because of the money that he spent to get access to him. And he talks about this phone call where he had with Luigi, in which Luigi was particularly empathetic with and concerned about the concept of becoming an NPC. That he was afraid, Luigi, according to Gurwinder, Luigi was concerned that he was becoming an NPC, that people are on autopilot, that they have accepted their life of servitude, they have accepted that things are just shitty, that the elite are just going to abuse us, that we're just going to have to get screwed, and that he was becoming one of them. And so I would say that the documentary postulates that it's after this discussion with Gurwinder that Luigi Mangione formulates in his mind, once and for all, that he's decided he is no longer, thank you for the gifts, by the way, that he's decided that he's no longer going to be an NPC. It bugged him so much. He's bitching about being an NPC and about he's afraid I was becoming one of them. And it bugged him so much he decided, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to be an NPC anymore. I'm going to do something. I'm going to quit bitching like everybody else that we need to change something, and I'm going to make a change. One of the things he also said is Luigi wrote to Gurwinder Bogle saying that Japan when he was visiting Japan. So Gerwinder said that Luigi reached out to him when Luigi was in Japan. He said, Japan is peak NPCville. Scary lack of free will in this country. He was again pointing out that Luigi was concerned that people are just on autopilot. They don't think. Gerwinder Bogle then says, he believed that people were increasingly living automated lives. It was a big concern of his. I got the feeling that he felt the lack of social connection himself, that people around him were not on the same wavelength as him. And I think it's because he's trying to postulate that Luigi wanted to do something about it and not just be a floater, an NPC. But nobody else wanted to do anything about it. And perhaps, it's pure speculation, perhaps he's been trying to get other people to get as pissed off as he is about it, and nobody seems to give a shit to do anything about it. In the letter to the feds, that's how it was attributed. Luigi, in his letter to the feds, writes, I do apologize for any strife or trauma, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites had it coming. So now we're going to talk about Luigi's plans, his goals, his motivations leading up to the shooting, as portrayed in this episode. Dan Abrams, the Law and Crime Network's guy, says, in my view, the fact that even his mother didn't know where he was would indicate that he really had made a decision to prepare for this incident. So in other words, he talks to Bogle, he talks to Gerwinder Bogle about how he's tired of being an NPC, that we're all just laying down and taking what's been given, and then he decides to do something about it, and he goes dark and he cuts off communication with his family. Casey Jordan, the criminologist, adds to this. Fast forward to the age of 25 and 26, and he's not communicating with his parents. He shut them out. Perhaps, in his mind, his family had become the enemy because they were capitalists. They were incredibly wealthy. Cutting off communication with his parents was the only way to keep these magical ideas afloat in his own brain. His parents would have been a reality check for him. So now they're saying, okay, so Luigi's like, I come from a life of affluence. I don't respect this. I didn't ask to be affluent. I don't want a life of affluence. I'm going to avoid my family who's not going to understand, who's living in a life of luxury, because I don't want them talking me out of my plan of action. They won't understand. They'll just, as she said, even having interaction with his wealthy family would be a reality check for him, that maybe he had gone wrong somewhere. They'd be like, what the hell's wrong with you, man? You're like, you're profiting off of being wealthy. So that's the kind of the idea. In the notebook to the Freds, again, they attributed Luigi's comment to the Freds. The details are finally coming together. I'm glad in a way that I procrastinated because it's allowed me to learn more about United Healthcare, or UHC. The target is insurance because it checks every box. So now he's formulating this attack on the system, on greed, on how our capitalistic society cares more about profits than people. Joseph Kinney, the NYPD detective, says, we know that when he first arrived in New York at the end of November, he visited the hotel where Brian Thompson would be staying. He definitely was casing the area. The morning of the incident itself, we know that he was at the hotel an hour prior. As of right now, we think he acted alone. I know there's discussion online about how long Luigi was there. One person says, an eyewitness says, that the shooter was there all night long. The officials seem to indicate Luigi was there for an hour and killed some time and stopped at a Starbucks, even sat on a park bench. Others say he was there about 15 minutes prior to the shooting. So we're not going to get into the details on that. I'm just explaining that according to the criminologist, or to the NYPD detective, he's stating the official story will be that Luigi was there for about an hour. Philip Klein, who was a former bodyguard of Brian Thompson, makes a comment on Brian Thompson's utter lack of security that morning. He mentions a couple things, but one, he says, it's the lone wolf theory. That's what we all fear the most. He doesn't tell anyone what he's doing. He travels by himself. He keeps a very low profile, and he tracks down his prey, and he does his thing. He's talking about Luigi. So he's indicating Luigi was what the system, what we all fear the most. You can't stop the lone wolf. If Luigi was acting with other conspirators to pull this off, somebody might have gotten tipped off. word would have gotten out. Things would have spread and leaked. But the lone wolf is the hardest to catch because he goes dark, he goes off the grid, and no one knows what he's doing until he pulls it off. And that's their worst fear, is the lone wolf. All right, we're nearing the end. I'm a little behind. I wanted to be done in an hour. We're probably going to be done more in like an hour and 20 minutes. A mention was made that the conference was posted online, so it would have been easy to find out where he was at and when it started. Many people have asked, how the hell did the shooter know? How did Luigi, if he was the shooter, how did he know Brian Thompson was going to be there on that day? Well, it was posted online. Luigi is supposedly quoted as saying, but again, not attributed to where this quote comes from, "This investor conference is a true windfall. And most importantly, the message becomes self-evident." Because it's an investor conference, allegedly. This is what I'm guessing what he means by the message becomes self-evident. They're there to talk about how are you going to make us more money this year. He's already irritated at the fact that everything in the system is geared towards profits over people. So when he sees that there's a United Healthcare conference going on for investors so they can talk about how we're going to make more money next year, he's like, now the target makes perfect sense. This is exactly what I've been waiting for. It is self-evident that this is where we need to go because they're literally talking about how are we going to make more money off of denying more claims for people, essentially. I'm reading a lot into that, but that's the assumption I think that they're trying to make for us. There's no explanation, by the way, how Luigi Mangione knew that Brian Thompson was going to go past the front entrance, go into a side entrance, anything like that. There's some discussion about the entrance that Brian Thompson passed by to actually go past a side entrance and go around to the front entrance. How the shooter knew that, they don't talk about that in the episode. We're not going to talk about that. I just thought it was a point of interest. So one of the things that Philip Klein, the former bodyguard, said also was that someone who runs a multi-billion-dollar corporation like Brian Thompson, that no one was protecting him that morning, that is just the biggest mistake in the corporate security world that I've seen in the corporate security world. In other words, his bodyguard believed that he couldn't believe nobody was guarding Brian Thompson that morning. So the conspiracy theorists ask the question, why didn't he have bodyguards? Did he normally have bodyguards? And if he didn't have bodyguards, what happened to the bodyguards? Was there social engineering that called off the bodyguards? Was somebody involved in this? Is it a bigger setup? Did he always have bodyguards? According to a former bodyguard of his, he's asking, the fact that he didn't have bodyguards is the biggest security lapse I've seen in my career, which means to me that he believed that Brian Thompson should have had bodyguards that morning. Where were they? Casey Jordan, the criminologist, says, once the news broke that the killer had inscribed the bullet casings with a magic marker with the words delay, deny, depose, it really narrowed down his motive. They were the mantra of the insurance industry for how they make money. Deny claims, defend them, depose anybody who tries to continue their claim against you. So once we knew that, it was clear that this person was a mission-oriented killer. Wendell Potter, then, who's a former insurance executive, I didn't look into him deeply, but he states in the episode, I'm not real popular in that community. He's a former insurance executive, and he's not real popular, and his opinions aren't real popular, because he's telling you in this episode the reality of profits over people. I was in the industry for 20 years, he said, and I'm not the industry's favorite person. Brian Thompson helped that company, United Healthcare, become very, very profitable. Luigi is then quoted, United is the largest company in the U.S. by market cap, behind Apple, Google, Walmart. It has grown and grown, but has our life expectancy? No. Wendell Potter then also comments, during the time that Brian Thompson was CEO at United Healthcare, a study of companies and their denial rates showed that United Healthcare was at the top, if not the top, in terms of denying or refusing coverage of treatments that patients needed. And it's an example of what that company in particular has been doing to satisfy Wall Street expectations. So again, this not very popular insider as a former executive of an insurance industry is telling us profits are what matter to the shareholders. Brian is shown on a video in that thing saying, we want the system to work better for everyone. Then Wendell comes in and basically says, let me run that through the universal translator of what he really was saying. When he tells you, we want the system to work for everyone, here's what Wendell Potter says it really means. The subtext of what he's saying is that, yeah, it would be great if they could figure out how to make the system work for all of the stakeholders. It's just simply not possible. Because if you are making the system work better for more smoothly for people enrolled in your healthcare plans, then that means there's not as much money left over to reward shareholders. So what he's saying is, Brian's like, hey, it would be great, and our goal is to make it good for everyone. However, as Wendell Potter would say, as an executive of an expert, it is impossible to meet both the needs of your shareholders and the needs of the people. So while it would be nice, and while it would be the goal, it is an impossible situation. So you must pick which side you're going to go with. Are you going to focus on making life better for your patients, or are you going to focus on making life better for your shareholders? Because you can't do both. I mean, you could try to do a little bit of both, but ultimately they are in conflict of each other. Giving better healthcare to people means less money for the shareholders. They mentioned briefly that Brian Thompson and other executives at United were under investigation for insider trading, for selling off stock, making a bunch of money. Just before it was announced, they were under investigation by the Department of Justice. I cover that in videos. It's been covered by other people on TikTok. It's a big issue. I always say follow the money. They don't spend a lot of time on it in the episode. So we're getting towards the end now. We really are getting towards the end. I'll be done here about 7:20, and then we can get a more open talk. Dan Abrams, the Law and Crime Network guy, he's doing a call-in show, he says. And he talks about this moment in the call-in show that became a realization to him about how screwed up America is. He says during the call-in show that he suggested that it was disgusting to think that Brian Thompson deserved to be killed for his company denying claims. And in response, every caller that called into his show after that, he said, was yelling at him for telling him that they viewed Luigi as a hero and that Brian Thompson was responsible for the deaths of thousands. Dan Abrams still maintains that it was disgusting, that what happened on the air. But he acknowledges that I was getting yelled at. I'm mentioning that it's disgusting that Brian Thompson's put the blame and murdered for this, and people are yelling at me saying, no, you're the problem. Like, that guy is the problem. And he's like, that's disgusting, maintaining the position. He also said, I think it is shameful to somehow blame Brian Thompson for his own murder. Casey Jordan, the criminologist, also says, there seems to be a tremendous amount of narcissism going on with Luigi Mangione. This is kind of a separate point. You know, here I am, she says. I'm so smart. I did this for a reason. It had to be done, and I'm the only person smart enough and brave enough to do it. That was her take from Luigi's attitude. He's a narcissist who thinks that nobody else is brave enough or smart enough to pull it off, so he's going to do it because he's the only one smart enough to do it. I didn't get that impression. I do think that Luigi was, according to the special, that Luigi was expressing, again, if we take the assumption that he wrote those things, he was expressing that we are all mostly pacifists and that people don't do anything. She pointed out how he was very cocky when he leans into the microphone to say the words not guilty with a level of confidence. He's just unperturbed by the whole process, she says, like it's beneath him. I'm sorry that I have to show up to this, she basically explains, though all of this in time you'll see was necessary. So that's how she portrays Luigi's attitude. I'm sorry that you guys, that I have to go this. This is really beneath me. I'm better than all of you, but you're going to see in the end that I was right. I don't know where she gets all that attitude from him. I see something different with the cocky attitude, if it was cocky or confidence. But that's the impression that she takes. And she's a criminologist specialist. This is what she does. She gets into the minds of the criminals. And that's what she saw. They, quote, attribute a letter to the feds by Luigi. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly, I wasn't working with anyone. You can check serial numbers to verify It's all self-funded, my own ATM withdrawals. I've always found it odd that Luigi supposedly immediately says, hey, I did it alone, nobody else was involved. That seems odd to me. Now, if the episode is accurate in their depiction of what Luigi is doing, he wanted, maybe for narcissistic reasons, this is the argument in this documentary, for narcissistic reasons, he wanted to be portrayed as the only guy brave enough to do this. So he wants to be like, yeah, I acted alone. Don't diminish what I did by saying others helped me, because this was all me, baby. I'm the only one smart enough to do it. I'm the only one brave enough to do it. I'm the only one confident enough to do it. I'm the only one who gives a shit. That's kind of the take that they're giving. Joseph Kinney, NYPD detective. I only got a few more quotes, and then we'll get into where do we go from here. He says, he also discusses the contrast. This is where I mentioned earlier. He also discusses, Luigi, the contrast, and somewhere he discussed this. I don't know if it was the letter to the feds. I don't know if it was in his notebook, but it says, he discusses the contrast about whether using a bomb to make his statement or to just kill the CEO himself. He states that if he used a bomb, potentially it might hurt innocent people, and that would take away from his message. So again, they're portraying the idea that Luigi wanted to make a statement. And what he didn't want anyone to confuse was that an innocent person got killed. He wanted to, according to the documentary's position, to make sure that no innocent person got killed so that it was clear that the message was against somebody with blood on their hands. It was not reckless. As supposedly Luigi points out in the Goodreads thing, Ted Kaczynski was rightfully imprisoned for maiming innocent people. He didn't want to be that guy. He didn't want his message being tainted by accidentally killing somebody who didn't deserve it. They note that Elizabeth Rosenthal had written a book that Luigi basically comments about. So let me read the quote. In the letter to the feds, Luigi supposedly said this: obviously the problem is more complex, but I do not have the space, and frankly don't pretend to be the most qualified person to lay it all out in full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption and the greed, i.e., or for example, e.g., Rosenthal and Moore. These references, they say, is to Elizabeth Rosenthal in her book, the New York Times writer who wrote the book, An American Sickness, How Healthcare Has Become Big Business and How You Can Take It Back. And Michael Moore, the documentarian who'd made the famous thing on the healthcare system called Sicko. So they're saying that Luigi pointed out that I don't have time and space, nor am I the most qualified to lay out the whole argument, but you all should be paying attention that this has all been talked about by this book. For example, The American Sickness, How Healthcare Has Become Big Business and How You Could Take It Back, and the movie Sicko from Michael Moore. In the letter to the feds, he's also quoted as saying, it's not an issue of awareness at this point, because everybody should know this, basically, is what he's saying. It's not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games are at play. Evidently, I'm the first to face it with such brutal honesty. Going back to the idea that he's narcissistic and he thinks he's the only one who can take care of this problem for everybody. Dan Abrams, Law and Crime Network, says, it sure seems to me that his defense, and now this is talking about what they think is going to happen, what the end goal is. It sure seems to me that his defense is not going to be that I didn't do it. He could try the insanity, but I don't think he's going to do it. I think that he would refuse. That would undermine his entire cause. But as a practical matter, his defense is likely going to focus on jury selection, trying to find people who will sympathize with or at least understand why Luigi Mangione did what he did. I have to agree as well. I don't expect Karen Agnifilo is going to state not guilty by reason of insanity. I don't believe that she, nor Luigi, if he did do it, wants to diminish what happened by stating, I just had a mental break, a lapse of reason. Nobody in their right mind would actually consider violence as... That makes no sense in light of the Goodreads report, if he really wrote it. That saying violence doesn't solve anything is the act of cowards and pacifists or predators. So there's every speculation that if Luigi is anything close to the reasons why they think that he did it in this episode, he is going to not only fight it, but he's going to say, I did it. Now, you argue he already said not guilty. Yes, everyone in court declares not guilty. That's how you proceed with court. So the case can be heard. Because if you say guilty, you're done. So you say not guilty and you get to have your day in court and you get to say everything you want to say. You get to have a platform. You get to bring out the injustices in the system. This is what's likely to happen. He's not going to plead guilty. He's going to use this as a platform to bring awareness to the situation. And this is why I've made such a big deal about trying to be careful about painting the idea that he just has a mental disorder and once he gets some help, he'll be over this craziness because nobody in his right mind would ever think that this is going to solve anything. Now we're on my last page. Thank God, right? Yolanda Wilson is a bioethics professor. She's quoted briefly in here about how, while I'm not rejoicing, this is the sentiment of some of the people who are viewing Luigi Mangione sympathetically. So while I'm not rejoicing about the UHC CEO being shot dead in the streets, I'm also not sad about it either. People deserve better than the U.S. healthcare industry, and chickens come to roost. Eric Adams, the New York mayor, has one moment on camera, that's it, where he says, we're seeing the radicalization of our young people. We're seeing our young people believing that the answer to a problem is by using violence. And I think that's the wrong way to go. And this is contrast to Luigi saying, those who say violence is never the answer. Jamie Peck was quoted shortly. She is with the December 4th legal committee. She had her moment in the sun for a couple minutes. She read some comments of support for Luigi Mangione, including someone who gave a $20 donation to the December 4th legal committee that says, NYPD officer here, we're rooting for you behind the scenes. Is that true? How do we prove that? But it's interesting to think that there could be people in law enforcement even who sympathize with the cause of Luigi Mangione. That whether or not he did it or not, there's an understanding on their part why he did it, and that they're secretly rooting for him. A doctor and a nurse also were listed as having donated money to Luigi's cause because they understand the message that he's trying to send. And this is how the show ends. And then I'll give you a few ideas on how you can maybe get involved and help out if the documentary is accurate on the portrayal of what Luigi's intentions and mission was, if that's true. I'm not saying it is, and I'm not saying it's not. But if it is, if this is his message, how do we not diminish him? And how do we also help make sure that what he did wasn't a failure? So here's what Gunwinder Bogle says when he's wrapping up kind of at the end. The point is, people aren't talking about the U.S. healthcare system. They're talking about Luigi. He's become a meme. People are focusing on Luigi. Although he had this hatred of posturing, it does seem like an act of posturing. By allegedly killing Brian Thompson, he's not going to fix the healthcare system in the U.S. It's just not going to happen. And one of his final parting thoughts is, I think he was intelligent and genuinely wanted to help people. And so it's just a great waste. Nothing good is going to come of this. And so that's the gist and the ending. Interesting that they allowed that to be the ending thought. Luigi had a mission. Luigi wanted to wake up American consciousness to corporate greed, profits over people, to a broken healthcare system, to a capitalistic society, and decided that pacifism and peaceful protests and legislation wasn't going to fix anything, and he was going to do something about it, and potentially wanted people to use this as a catalyst for change. And the ending thing is, he failed. Because all we care about is how hot he is, and how we want to sleep with him, and how we want to marry him when he gets out of jail, and how he's innocent and he didn't do the things he's accused of, or he's got mental health issues and he doesn't know what he was doing, he's not in his right mind. So once he gets fixed, he can be a normal person like the rest of us again. Instead of what he wanted to do, which was change America and make people wake up to class consciousness and start a revolution, if that's what he wanted to do. So there it is. That's my analysis, my deep dive of what the special Luigi Mangione, or who is Luigi Mangione. I'm now going to take some comments and some questions. I'll let somebody take the mic with me if you want to talk about it and have more of an engaging conversation. But I will start to look through comments now to see if you have any comments, questions, concerns, if you think I did unfairly with the review, and so on. Wish people would stop saying he did not, saying I do not think he did. He said not guilty. Yes, everyone says not guilty, even if they're guilty in court. That is how our legal system works. You plead not guilty. And then later on, if you find out you're losing the case, you plead, you change your plea. But it doesn't, again, let me make sure I'm clear about this. I don't want to lose a bunch of comments. I am a firm believer in the concept of innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Luigi Mangione is not guilty yet. He is not, and may never be guilty. In fact, I also pointed out at the start of this thing, there's a difference between innocent and not guilty, or not innocent and not guilty. These legal terms are a little gray. So I believe in the presumption of innocence. I believe in him having his day in court. I believe that the government has to make their case and they have to prove it. And until such time, we have to presume that he's innocent. But for the sake of argument, I want people to ask themselves, if Luigi did do it, if he did do it, are we diminishing everything he stood for by refusing to accept that he did it and saying he didn't do it, he's innocent, he's framed, or he's got a problem with his head, instead of just saying, yeah, he did it, and maybe it was the right time, and maybe it was the right thing? Do we diminish what he did if we continue down that path, if that's what he really was doing? He chose the wrong month. Society is too worried about the holidays in December. Revolution doesn't happen overnight. I agree. A lot of people say Gurwinder Bogle's comment that he failed is too early. You can't say he failed yet. This game isn't over. I still don't think you did it. I have no problem. I have no problem with that, and I don't disagree with you. I think it's great. Thank you for telling me that I did a good summation of the documentary. Unfortunately, the documentary was 1 hour long. My summary was 1 hour and 20 minutes long. So I did more talking about the documentary than the documentary did itself. The political awakening going on right now is partly focused by Luigi's actions. I agree. In fact, one of the things I pointed out before is I think that Blue Cross changed their policy of limiting the amount of time that an anesthesiologist can charge for a surgery because of the Brian Thompson situation. So one could argue things have already changed. I'll also tell you another way, anecdotally, meaning it's just my one little experience. But I listened to my wife take a phone call from an insurance company that had denied a claim of hers from years ago and came back now asking for the money for something that they originally paid for. And my wife got a little testy on the phone and said, are you telling me that you're denying the claim and reversing your charges? And you should have heard how freaked out. No. We're not saying we're denying your claim. We just need a little bit more information. They were terrified, in my opinion. Terrified. Because class consciousness is just waiting for someone to say, are you telling me you're denying my claim? No. No, we're not saying. So maybe something is starting to change. Maybe. People railed behind him because of shared outrage at the healthcare system, not his looks. I hope that's the case. I know a lot of people are only concerned about his looks. And there's nothing wrong with being okay with the message and his looks, but I think there's some that just simply want him to be innocent because they think he's cute. And he can't be guilty because that would mean he's a bad guy, and he can't be a bad guy because he's such a nice guy and he's cute, and I want to marry him someday. His hotness is going to get people engaged in a revolution. If it's going to happen, let's be real. Maybe. I mean, a good spokesman, right? You don't want to have somebody who doesn't have charisma being your spokesman for a revolution. Why do they not give us solutions for change instead of saying that he failed? What can we do? Oh yeah, I was going to tell you some things I wanted to say that you could do. As a starter, engage in conversation as a starter. One of the easiest things you can do is get on a Discord channel. Like I have a Discord channel that I set up, but nobody's in it, for the Devil's Advocates, where we can talk about these and have frank discussions and open things. That's one way. It's an easy way to do it. I would recommend an easy way for you to start getting involved in making a change is go watch How to Blow Up a Pipeline, the movie, and start thinking about the message that it sends and what it means. Watch Michael Moore's Sicko. Those are super easy. Couple of hours of your time and you can bring yourself up to speed on some of the problems in America and some of the thought process of the youth and what ways to deal with it. If you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, I would recommend maybe reading the book, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, because that was a nonfiction book talking about how legislation, peaceful protests have failed. I have not read the book, but I would love to lead a group discussion or be part of a book club or a thing where we read a chapter every week and come talk about it to engage and educate ourselves in the system. I would love to read, another suggestion would be read Rosenthal's book that Luigi apparently suggested reading, An American Sickness, How Healthcare Has Become Big Business and How You Can Take It Back. If that book was recommended by Luigi and is talking about how you can take back your healthcare system, maybe we should read it. You want to know what we can do? Educate ourselves on the problem. Educate ourselves on the issues. Read the books that he suggested. Watch the movies. Get yourself up to speed on it, and then start speaking out and having conversations. For that matter, read Ted Kaczynski's book, The Industrial Society and Its Future. Just some suggestions on ways you could start to get involved in a peaceful way to educate yourself. Okay, I'm really behind. $500,000 has been raised for his defense fund. I don't think Luigi needs that money, but I understand people's desire to support it. And I know that Karen Agnifilo said they are going to use those funds. Maybe those funds were used, for example, to put the website up. He got $300,000 in donations, and all of a sudden they have a website that's like, hey, here's this website. They probably hired a whole team to run the website for them, and maybe they're using those funds. Like they're using different funds to pay for his defense, but maybe those funds helped, do the public announcement on the website and get a conversation going with us. Gerwinder has no clue how Americans feel about their healthcare. None. Fair. You did a great job. I won't watch, so thank you. Absolutely, thank you so much for the support on my analysis of the show. I appreciate that, and thank you for trusting me to give you my rundown on it. I'm flattered by that. It wouldn't be the first time violence was used to protect human rights. Absolutely. How can you say he failed? Public reaction was immediately overwhelming and clear. They're scared. I agree. And I did not say they failed. I said the show's summary was, did Luigi fail? Is it going to fail? One could argue it's failed because nothing else is happening, right? There was a time, and I'm not promoting violence, please understand, but there was a time right after this happened when people were putting wanted posters up about other CEOs of healthcare companies and crossing off Brian Thompson. There was people who made playing cards with the CEOs' faces on it and all the details of the criminal acts that they've accomplished. That shit stopped. People aren't doing that anymore. They cracked down hard and said, we're not going to tolerate you guys glorifying a killer. And so it just immediately ended. But there was a time when a revolution looked like it was starting. People were like, F these guys. But that has seemed to have stopped. Now, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There are people organizing all over the country, probably doing various things. There could be another lone wolf out there. If one of my early theories is correct, Luigi did not act alone. The red herrings that he's put in place, like the Monopoly money, the Pokemon, the other things that have done suggest that it's a game being played. If he was following the pattern of how to blow up a pipeline, he helped the others get away, and it'll probably happen again. I'm not saying I condone those things. What I'm saying is, you're right to say, this is, you can't stick a fork in the revolution and say the revolution is done. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 6 months to a year. There's been no action taken that's been meaningful yet. But it's only been 2 months. Yeah. If he was basement dweller creeper type, he would not get the publicity. Right. So his looks are helping make a national discussion out of this. I had to go to the ER, and they were so nice when it was time to ask for payment because they're afraid, maybe. Again, anecdotally, things have changed a little bit. Health insurance is a little bit more nervous to deny, right? The last thing United Healthcare, I bet you money, the last thing United Healthcare wants to be the headline next year is that their denial rates have gone up even higher after Brian Thompson. I bet you there's a course correction, whether they'll admit it or not. And of course, they'll never admit that lower numbers of denial claims had anything to do with Brian Thompson, because that would be saying that he made a difference. And they can't. Because that would be suggesting that was beneficial. Someone said yes to a book club. I would love to be involved in a book club. If any of you guys want to read that book, reach out to me. We'll organize something. We'll get those books. We'll start reading it together if you want. And we'll start discussing it, educating ourselves on the system. I would suggest starting with Rosenthal's book, the how to take back your healthcare system. Sounds really interesting to me. I would love to read that book. Where can we find the first bit of tomorrow's court? I don't know if they're having it televised or not. Good question. Did the date sneak up on me, the 19th? Yeah. So I'll be looking for that. I'm not sure yet. I'm glad that you are here for change. I am also wanting change so desperately. Our system is broken. Our healthcare system is broken. Our class warfare is broken. The elite have been abusing middle class and destroying the middle class in this country for a long time. I'll try to stay off my soapbox, but there is no middle class anymore. You're poor or you're wealthy. There's very little middle class left, and it has been a systematic destruction. CEOs make so many more times than the average worker in their factory now. It's ridiculous. It's the haves and the have-nots, and they lie. I'll try to be off my soapbox shortly. They lie to us in America. We have been duped by the system into thinking we own shit. And because we think we have toys, we think we're rich. I got a cell phone. I got a house. I got a car. No, you have a bank loan in which the bank has ownership of your house. You make payments. You stop making payments, the bank takes the real property back from you. You own shit. You own nothing. You own payments to a bank. The bank owns your house. The bank owns most of our cars. Most of us are under contract on our phones. We have been lied to in this system to think that we own shit and that we're wealthy because we have toys. But we own none of it. We make payments to people who own our shit, the actual property. It seems Blue Cross stood down and changing their policy on the anesthesia. Yes, I talked about that. I don't know if you were here when I talked about that. That did seem to be, in my opinion, a direct consequence of Brian Thompson. They immediately reversed course and said, you know what, we're going to rethink that whole policy. I think that made a difference. Has anyone pointed out the part on the website that says submit your stories? Nope, I have not seen that. I thought your breakdown was good. You delivered its message with or without your thoughts or bias. Thank you. I think I did have some bias in there. Unfortunately, there's no way not to. No way not to. But thank you for saying that I did a good job of trying to present it as best I could without bias, as best I could. It's never without bias, right? You made me think about what day it was. Yeah, because of the hearing coming up. Is that the Pennsylvania one or the New York State? I think it's Pennsylvania. I'm not sure. How has it only been 2 months? I feel like it's been 2 years. Yeah. I'm trying to catch up. I'm 14 messages behind, 13. Both books. What books? Just got the number one. Oh, thank you for gifts. I'm just so out of touch. Number one, he is accused. 2, is legal defense just 500,000 and growing fast. I'm not sure if I'm out of touch. I don't know how I'm out of touch on that. I mentioned all these things. Memes are how people connect and communicate today. They bring light to a serious situation. True. February 21st, not the 20th, okay, is the date of the court. It's on Friday, is the next court date. Who on LawTube is covering this? Doesn't undermine the importance of the message. Can you confirm if court is 8 a.m. or 2 on Friday? The website and Pacer give 2 different times. I'm going through my comments, trying to get caught up, seeing if anybody wants to take the mic after that, and otherwise we'll shut down. And again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I can't believe we still have 47 people in the room, because right now we're just reading comments and I'm just commenting on comments. If you would like to come up on the microphone, I would prefer that we've talked before, either in text on a regular basis or on live. But I'll weigh that as we go. I would love for somebody to have a moment to speak their mind, as long as you do it in a way that doesn't get my account banned, kicked off, or flagged. That would be fantastic, which is why I'm a little bit nervous to do that with strangers. The Pennsylvania one has been canceled. Okay. You believe that the Pennsylvania's been canceled. Okay, perfect. People are distracted by most Trump administration. We have seen Lulu in so long. Everyone is okay. Catching up on court stuff. Okay, I'm caught up. Any questions about what I said? Anybody want to tell me I'm just an asshole and have everything wrong and need to go pack sand? Anyone want to tell me that they agree with any of my videos? Anybody want to have a moment to take the mic? Let's get somebody on the mic. Let's get... wait a minute. Somebody asked to be on, and then it's not clear which one it was. Was it Lady Capulet? Yes, my website is in my bio, devilsadvocates.info. Also the website, also the YouTube channel is Devil's Advocates. Thank you so much for asking. If you're asking about that. Hey, lady, how you doing?
Hey, I just wanted to thank you for that, so I don't have to watch it. That was fantastic. I'll watch the rerun on YouTube.
Yeah, I unfortunately I talked longer than the actual documentary,
Which is awesome. And I have a couple points I just wanted to quickly say. The reason I believe that they're saying that it was a failure is because they want to deflate any hopes from the general public that this could move people enough to demand change. All of these documentaries are being put out by, huge corporations that clearly have an agenda. So they're trying to stifle any inspiration, any hope of people being inspired by him.
I agree.
And so they're gonna, try to get that message out constantly. It's been 2 months, little over 2 months. We have a new administration. It's been a hot mess. I mean, the trials haven't even started. There's plenty of time for some type of a revolution and real change. And then my second point real quick was just, when people say that he doesn't need the money with the donations, I think they're missing the point of the donations as I see that. And the reason I think Luigi's accepting them. We don't know if mommy and daddy is paying for his defense. We actually don't know where it's coming from. Right. Number one. Number two, it's going to cost upwards of 10 million plus. And the point of the donations, as I see it, is similar to Bernie Sanders 2016, where he rejected big profit, Home Depot, giving him 40 million, and lobbyists giving campaign funds for him that he would be in the pocket with. He relied on tiny donations from the general public, everyday people, and wasn't the average like $3 or something?
Yeah, let me
insane.
Let me reiterate what you just said, because you made a fantastic point. What kind of message would it send if his defense is entirely supported by the little people and didn't have to come from money?
That's right? That's what I'm getting at, because it's far more powerful that regular everyday people are getting behind him and giving small $3, $5, and leaving these little notes. Sorry, this is all I have this week. And it is speaking to the movement. So when people are talking about nothing's happened, that in itself is happening. We're giving a kid that we think is extremely wealthy, whose parents own 2 country clubs, and we don't give a damn. People are writing, I'm going to go without coffee this week, but it's worth it. Good luck, Luigi. That's incredibly powerful. It's sending a message to the public. And if it hits, 2 million, that's more impactful. And that's why I think he's getting it.
Let me defend myself a little bit. And I don't think you were attacking me, but let me defend myself to some that would think that what I was trying to say, but I don't think that Luigi needs your money. It wasn't because I don't think that there's a positive thing by exactly what you're saying. Is it shows that the public supports him. That and I think that's huge. I was just simply trying to make a statement that I think personally his family probably is helping, but I feel in light of what you're just saying, that also might diminish what's happening with the public fund. So my statement was simply like, I think he's got the money to take care of this defense. But having said that, I don't want people to feel like I'm diminishing that it's a big deal for the public to support him. And
no, I was, that was not directed to you. It's just everybody, the response around just social media to a ton of people has been that. Certainly every time it's been spoken about on the news. I listened to Court TV say how ludicrous it was that people are sending money to this rich kid. So that wasn't directed at you. It was just a general statement to make everybody stay on task here, because that is impacting change.
I agree.
And they hate it. They hate to see it.
Yeah. And they want to shame. It's funny how everybody wants to shame in media anyone who supports Luigi. And they'll say things like, it is disgusting that you'll support a murderer. And I'm like, have we forgotten innocent until proven guilty in a court of law? You're already calling him a murderer and then telling everybody that they're disgusting for supporting a murderer when he hasn't even had his day in trial yet.
Right.
But this is how they want to control the narrative.
100%. And they have no problem with people having fundraisers for Rittenhouse and for that other New York guy that murdered the homeless guy on the subway, who was who had all of, I guess everything was dropped literally on December 9th when Lulu was arrested. That guy raised $3 million.
Yeah.
And that was, people were bragging about it on social media, huge MAGA supporters coming out and saying, my business gave money. So why is that okay yet? And that was talked about in Fox News, like it's this wonderful thing that's happening, yet they can't stand that $5 at a time is being given to Luigi.
It's an effort by the media to control the narrative in America and try to let everybody think that everyone believes that this is disgusting. And so if they keep telling you all the time, this is disgusting, it's reprehensible, that people like this guy and support him, you should be ashamed of yourself because everyone else is ashamed of you. And if they can make that message keep getting beat home, then you might feel, I better not speak up anymore because apparently I'm disgusting for thinking. And that's what they want you to think, is that you're all alone and everybody else in America thinks you're a disgusting, reprehensible person for supporting a murderer.
Right. But everybody should keep donating. And I think that that was not taken lightly, the accepting of those funds by the law firm, by him. Like that was all like clearly deliberate and not because they need it. And I also think if it's not mom and dad, I think along with mom and dad, I think he's also getting huge help from behind the scenes, private Penn alumni, Stanford alumni. I mean, his communities were huge and wealthy. And there's a ton of, the Gilman parents that have lots of money that see their son in him and are going to do private donations behind the scenes just to give him a chance at life. Advocacy groups that are against the DP. But the most powerful is the regular everyday people doing the Bernie Sanders style of, and that's why Bernie Sanders deliberately did that, to show just how it gives a voice to everybody that your $3 matters. Your vote matters. Don't sit there and think you don't count because you can't write a check for 10,000. I'll take 3 and we're going to make a huge change.
Right. Yeah, and like you said, you made an excellent point. The public supporting it is a big statement in itself. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And that was all. I just wanted to go say those 2 little things. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Did I accidentally invite you up, or did you actually want to come up tonight?
No, I wanted to tonight and just say those things.
Awesome.
And now I feel, so you didn't like the documentary?
This last documentary, I didn't like it? Are you asking? I got mixed feelings. I think it wasn't as bad as a lot of people say it was.
Okay.
But so it's hard to explain. I guess I'll try to summarize how I started it out. If Luigi really wrote those things, it's a fairly interesting analysis of what might be going through Luigi's head. That's if those things are true. If he really was Mr. Cactus writing on Reddit, and he really was the one that wrote the Goodreads thing, and those quotes are really out of Luigi's thought process, then it did a fairly good job of giving us an idea of what Luigi Mangione may have wanted to accomplish. That's all predicated on whether or not those things are really written by him or not. So if it was, I think they did a pretty good job. It's some speculation, it's for sure well, we have to assume he must have been depressed and he must have been. So whenever they do that, I'm kind of like, you don't know. None of us know exactly. But I wasn't horrified by the show, but I also feel like it had some problems. So did I like it? I don't know. I can't really say. I think what I do think is I think it's good that people keep an open mind and listen to all sides of the story, because just dismissing the other side as lies and bullshit before you've even heard it means you're not paying attention. Educate yourself on what's going on, hear both sides of the story, realize the truth oftentimes leads somewhere in the middle, and try to logic it out and make a decision for yourself. But don't just blindly stick your head in the sand and go, I already know what happened in this case, so that's all that needs to be talked about.
Oh, you're making me feel like I should go watch it. Interesting. That was a great way of putting it, because if we are just on one, and I'm still constantly doing that somewhere in the middle with everything.
Yeah.
But if you ignore all the stuff and just continuously say he's blindly innocent through this whole thing.
Well, somebody just pointed out what you asked me how I felt about this one, but somebody just pointed out that the TMZ one was disgusting. That I can 100% agree.
Oh.
So in light of that, this was so much better than the TMZ documentary. TMZ's was disgusting.
Who owns Investigation Discovery? Does anyone know?
Ted Turner, doesn't he own everything? I don't know.
I don't know either. The TMZ was oh my gosh. That was just a hit piece. That was a blatant hit piece.
Oh, yeah.
They weren't even trying to hide it.
Not even close. And the rolling of the eyes anytime anybody said anything positive about Luigi, and arguing with them if they said something positive. I mean, if you're going to do a good documentary, let people say positive things, let people say negative things, let the audience decide. But they were clearly trying to guide that entire thing. You're disgusting for saying anything positive. Right. I'm just not going to tolerate that on our show because it was disgusting. And that was the whole episode.
Right. And wait until, if they are going to allow it, if the decision becomes made by Karen and the team to start putting out documentaries, because you don't think there's people with huge money that are reaching out that are going to go, we want to put out our own, yeah, and make one from his. They're going to be in trouble when that happens, because nobody's really going to say anything bad about him. Right. I mean, there's TMZ was scrapping someone that partied with him. The two German guys that partied with him for 2 weeks was all they had, and like the weird surf guy. Yeah,
it was
there's layers of communities that are incredibly impressive communities that were in love with the kid.
Right.
As far as we can tell.
That again is a little bit of a support for this documentary compared to TMZ. This was a pretty good one. TMZ was really good.
All right. That makes me feel like I might break the rule and watch it.
There's going to be things you could disagree with. There's things I disagreed with, but again, compared to that hit piece, it was okay. It was all right.
And it's good to see what possible juries are seeing.
Right.
Because they're watching all this stuff. You're not going to find somebody in New York that has not seen anything.
There was a New Yorker that called in at that talk show that was featured in the in this latest documentary, and the New Yorker was basically saying, "Good luck finding a jury that convict that guy in New York. We're not going to do it."
Really?
Yeah. He was just like, he's like, no, like, yeah, good luck trying to convict him. Like it was almost kind of like, we got this guy. Don't worry about it. He's more now. It's just one guy running his mouth. But his attitude was New Yorkers are not going to convict this guy.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm happy it's there. I kind of can't think of a better place for it to be. Also, just because people are sort of freaking out over Mayor Adams getting off and all that, I think that might get people's knickers in a twist even more.
Sure. I think so too.
He is not liked. That was not a decision by the people in any capacity.
Yeah.
And particularly what he's tried to do with screwing them over with their health care. All of the elderly people, he's tried to completely screw them and get them into Medicare Advantage plans that have destroyed like them financially. So this would be, yeah, I can see just that helping him instead of, Mayor Adams can't do anything to keep him imprisoned.
Yeah, there's a lot of people disgusted by that whole thing, and that's probably a topic for another day. I will say this: I'm gonna do a close now on the show, and I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Oh yeah, thank you. You're awesome.
I talked to you so long that it was nice and refreshing to have somebody to banter a little bit with. Not banter because we didn't argue with each other, but you know what I'm saying, to have some back and forth. So I'm going to do a close and wrap up. I want to thank everyone who came tonight. Really super awesome turnout. One of the highest likes in our thing tonight with 12,500 likes. For me, that's good. A concurrent user thing of 50 was amazing. Gifts came in. You guys were freaking awesome. You listened to me ramble. I love the fact that people gave a shit about what my opinion is in my life. It seems like no one ever gives a shit what I have to say. So thank you so much for giving a shit what I have to say. Hopefully you are also adding to the conversation and that you're keeping an open mind and that you are having conversations in the workforce. Read some books. Reach out to me if you want to get in a book club and you want to do a book together and go through it chapter by chapter and talk about it. I will open up all kinds of lines of communication for you if you're so inclined. This show will be re-aired on YouTube in a couple of hours. It'll also be featured on my website, devilsadvocates.info. There's always a link to the latest YouTube videos on my website. I got a Discord channel. I don't advertise it, haven't been advertising it. However, if you are interested in having more one-on-one conversations, I am very accessible in private messages, also in private encrypted messages. So if you want to have a private conversation outside of the eyes of others, we can do that on WhatsApp. We can do it on Signal. I'm wide open for anybody who wants to talk. I'm trying to make friends here. I hope that you guys are as well. And let's talk about this and let's not let this go to waste. This is something we should be talking about in America. Thank you so much for checking in. Love you guys. Have a good evening.